There's a lot of business turnaround artists out there, but I'm the only one putting up his own money.
Hi everybody, welcome to On the Money. I'm Maria Bartiromo. Today coming to you from the Aspen Ideas Festival, where movers and shakers from the world of finance, politics, and the arts have gathered. The markets stopped their slide, interest rates stopped their climb. Why and what's different this week? Also, a rare conversation with former Treasury Secretary Hank Paulson. A look back at the stressful days of the financial crisis, a look ahead to where he thinks the economy is headed now. And then renowned cellist Yo-Yo Ma makes beautiful music. But how does he make a profit? Digital dollars, classical music, and transformational technology. On the Money begins right now.
This is America's #1 financial news program, On the Money. Now, Maria Bartiromo.
Here's a look at what's making news as we head into a new week on the money. The markets returned to rally mode this week with a bang and fears of the Fed fading. The Dow Industrials posted the best three-day winning streak in nearly a year with triple-digit gains on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. The streak, though, was broken on Friday. The move came after Fed officials were out and about saying that the Fed had no immediate intention of raising interest rates and that the markets had misinterpreted Ben Bernanke's statements last week. The sentiment echoed by Goldman Sachs Chairman and CEO Lloyd Blankfein, who told me the markets misunderstood the Fed chairman.
The Chairman Bernanke, said we're going to be very data dependent, but if the data reflects growth and very much focused on unemployment specifically, then we're going to ease ourselves, taper ourselves off of quantitative easing. He said potentially by the end of the year, not necessarily if the data doesn't support it.
The final measure of the gross domestic product for the first quarter of the year was released this week and revised downward to an annualized rate of 1.8% growth. That's down from a previous measure of 2.4%. It was less than expected and was due in part to weaker personal consumption. Housing remained a bright spot. Two signs of strength in the housing market. The S&P Case-Shiller Home Price Index was up 1.7% in April, surpassing expectations. It also had the biggest annual gain in 7 years, partly due to tightening inventory and fewer foreclosures. And sales of new homes rose to the highest level in nearly 5 years. They were up 2.1% to an annualized rate of 476,000, and that was above expectations. The market certainly felt different this week. Did anything fundamentally change, or did they just take a deep breath and reinterpret what Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke said about interest rates? Joining me now, Austin Goolsbee, former chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors and University of Chicago Booth School of Business professor, and Kai Ryssdal, host and senior editor of American Public Media's Marketplace. Gentlemen, good to see you.
Good to be here.
Thanks so much for joining us. So Austin, let me kick this up with you. What is your take? So many Fed members this week, governors, officials, spent the week walking back Ben Bernanke's comments, basically saying, trying to make it clear that interest rates are not going up anytime soon. Do you think Bernanke miscommunicated to the market?
Maybe. I think.
Did the markets misinterpret?
I think the markets largely misinterpreted, and I thought what happened is the market was kind of taking a drink of water, and then he said something, and then they spit it out. They said, "Well, what did he say?" Right. And then the rest of the Fed came back and said, "No, wait a minute, you didn't need to spit out your drink. It was no different from what he's been saying all along." So I think 95% of the transparency from the Fed, that they have the press conference, that they explain what they're doing, is for the good. But the 5% that we also need to keep in mind is this does generate more news on the day when they actually say things. And so that's just going to add some volatility, and that's kind of what I think happened this week.
I thought it was really interesting that after Chairman Bernanke came and said his piece, he sent all these other people out to sort of re-clarify.
Yeah, but I don't know that they don't just do his bidding. I mean, I think they wanted to make clear their points of view.
So is anything really different this week, Kai? I mean, the market seemed calmer. We had some gains. It certainly felt different after the reassuring words from the other Fed members.
Yeah, I think it's all about feeling, right? It's all about the markets realizing that everything that Ben Bernanke says does not necessarily have to be taken as gospel. We had him on Thursday coming back and said, you know what? The economy has been the victim of misunderstanding here on what the Fed said. I think if Ben Bernanke had it to do all over again, he would walk back those things in that same press conference that he had a week and a half ago.
You do?
Oh, yeah, in a heartbeat. If he had been able to have a stock ticker right there watching it go, he would have said, you know what? Let me back up for a second and revise and extend my previous remarks. It would have been all over in 10 minutes.
Live in real time.
Yeah, totally.
With the stock ticker.
Absolutely.
I'm a little. I hope that the Fed, and usually the Fed does not, I hope they're not just looking at the stock market and saying, how's the stock market react?
Right.
We got to go change our statement. I do think they freaked out a little as rates started going up rapidly, as people concluded, as Kai said, they were kind of concluding more than what he thought he was saying. So I think he might have said it differently.
That's actually the story, right? The bond market and the 10-year T-note, not to get all technical on that stuff.
You're right.
But it's up a full % in 60 days, which is bananas.
Yeah. Yeah. And does the economic data justify that? I mean, we had the GDP revised downward this week, right? We had, there was some strong news on other fronts in terms of housing, in terms of some other areas, but GDP was revised downward. A lot of questions about unemployment. So
inflation is still bupkis.
Right? I mean, it is.
So how is the economy doing? Is it justified to see that big move in the 10-year?
No, I think the economy is doing fine. Not as well as anybody wants, right? But it's growing in real terms in gross domestic product. We're adding jobs in this economy, 175,000 on average, as you guys well know. It's not what we want, but it's growth. It's positive.
Look, I think that's true. I think some part that's hard to distinguish exactly what proportion, but some part was a little bit of freak out about China, where you're seeing things that might easily morph into a big financial crisis because of the credit squeeze that's going on in China and their rates really going up. But I don't think that the growth we've seen, as modest as it was, is enough to convince people that the Fed is going to really pull the plug on this thing earlier.
Let me ask you about this landmark ruling this week, Kai, the Supreme Court ruling that the federal government cannot ban gay marriage. A lot of big corporations talking about this, lining up in favor of this ruling. What kind of an impact does this have on the corporate side of things as well as the economy? Any impact?
Well, so I think actually what's going to happen on the corporate side of things is going to take second place, is going to take the backseat to what happens on the federal side of things. There are plus or minus 1,000 different rules, 1,000 different benefits that heterosexual married couples get, that gay couples until this past week didn't get. I think those are all going to play out, and then corporations are going to line up and they're going to follow the law. They're going to have to,
And look, in many sectors, they've answered this question a long time ago. So if you had to attract talent, you want to get whoever has that talent. They've been offering corporate level benefits to domestic partners for a long time. I wonder, look, if they change the rules in Las Vegas, the wedding economy may be booming in the next 6 months. Who knows?
That's very funny. So we're at the Aspen Ideas Festival. What are the big ideas that struck you so far?
I'm still searching for the extraterrestrial life. We've had a lot of science, but I think that on the economic side, the issues, and Kai's had an important panel about consumer spending and the nature of the economy going forward. Can it be what it was before, or is it going to be something fundamentally different? That's a pretty big idea.
Yeah, and they had big ideas. You said science. They had a lot of sessions on space, a couple of sessions on small business.
Yep. A lot on the future of television news, by the way.
That's right. Yeah, with the digital revolution taking over. So what do you think is the talk of Aspen?
I think the talk of Aspen actually is there are two things. One is our role in the consumer economy. I mean, I think, we've been talking about, before we went on the air, talking about the consumer and the economy up here. I think we need to think about how we, as people in this economy, want to keep on buying and want to keep on doing stuff. And then the other one is, as I talked about, media and the future of media and what it's going to look like, because it's not going to look like this 10 years from now.
All right, we'll leave it there. Austin, Kai, good to see you both. Thanks very much. Austin Goolsbee, Kai Ryssdal is joining us. Up next on The Money, a rare conversation with former Treasury Secretary Hank Paulson. We'll talk Ben Bernanke, Fed tapering, and why China really matters. And later, the great Yo-Yo Ma joins me, the Grammy Award-winning cellist on classical music, the changing music industry, and arts education. Welcome back from beautiful Aspen, Colorado. As the markets speculate on the Federal Reserve's next move, I sat down with the man who helped pull our economy back from the brink of disaster, former Treasury Secretary Hank Paulson. 5 years after managing the financial crisis, he weighs in on the Fed pullback, Washington's perpetual deadlock, and the future of the U.S. economy.
Ben Bernanke has done an excellent job of preparing the market for the fact, for an inevitable fact that this extraordinary intervention by the Fed and extraordinarily low interest rates, that is going to eventually have to end. Now, as I look at it from 100,000 feet, what the Fed has done has been very important, because over the last 5 years, we've had a very necessary, massive deleveraging of the economy and the financial system, and we've been able to grow at around 2%. So that's quite an accomplishment in and of itself, and the Fed's policies have been, to a large extent, responsible. To me, it's just completely unrealistic to assume that those programs could be phased out without some market volatility and some pain, because market participants, some of them are addicted to these abnormally low interest rates. The big question is, why is the Fed the only game in town?
Yeah.
Okay, why is it? What we need to do is we need to get our economy growing faster than 2%. We need to deal with the deficit. The only way you're going to do that is bipartisan compromise. We need an immigration bill. We need a tax reform that lets us raise the revenues we need and be competitive. We need to reform, Medicare and Social Security. So we need more, and we need more action from Congress and the executive branch.
In terms of the fiscal policy, why is it so? You're a business guy first, but you were there in government. You know how it works. Why is it so difficult to get tax reform going and an immigration agreement?
Well, to me, that's really the question. I think the Fed has been asked to do a lot because, the rest of the government is doing very little, frankly, and that. So we need some of these other things, and we have twin challenges, and they go together, and they are the need for more growth, and for more actions to deal with the debt problem, with the deficit.
A lot of people would like to see mortgages move to the private sector.
Right.
What is it? Still 90%
Yeah.
of mortgages are issued by Fannie and Freddie.
Yep. At the time of the crisis, I think the thing we did that was the single most effective thing that got the least attention, because we acted before the markets panicked, was to get in, stop failure, stabilize, essentially nationalize through conservatorship those entities. And they were like 9 times bigger than Lehman Brothers. It would have been disastrous if they'd failed. And then they provided mortgage financing, which kept housing prices from dropping further in a worse crisis. But it never dawned on me that, they were insuring about half, a little bit less than half the mortgages. Now the government more than 90%. And, how did we get here? We got here because of flawed government policies, overstimulating housing. Fannie and Freddie are ground zero. And as you've said, the key is getting the private sector into this. Because if the government is setting the prices on your mortgages through a subsidy, what you're going to do is you're going to ultimately get things that it's not market reality, it's not economic reality, and you will get another bubble again in housing.
So we're setting ourselves up right now then, unless a change is made.
We should have a plan in place to transition to a time when the private sector can play a much bigger role in terms of financing mortgages.
But let me ask you about China.
Right.
You've been spending a lot of time in China since departing Washington. What do you make of what's going on there right now, the moves we've been seeing in China? We know that things have slowed down. How would you characterize the economy right now?
What the slowdown shows is that the leaders know they need to reform the growth model. It's running out of steam. They know they need to reform their financial system, and they're willing to tolerate slower growth while they fix their financial system. And I am much more focused on the next 3 to 5 years, because I think that the good news is that the country's got strong leadership and knows they need a reform. The bad news is these are going to be very difficult to execute. There's a lot that needs to be done.
My thanks to Hank Paulson. Up next on The Money, from child prodigy to rock star, cellist Yo-Yo Ma reveals the secrets to his success. And maybe he'll play a little something for us. Stay with us. Once a child prodigy, Yo-Yo Ma grew up to become one of the classical music industry's most famous performers and one of its foremost proponents. He mentors the next generation of classical artists through his nonprofit organization, the Silk Road Project, Yo-Yo Ma, it's wonderful to have you on the program.
Thank you so much, Maria. It's great to be
Oh, God, we
on
love
your
having
program.
you. So after being a recording artist for the past 30 years, we want to find out your background. You were with the same label, Sony. What's the state of the classical music industry today? Are audiences still engaged in terms of purchasing and recording music?
Well, what's interesting is that, what we hear statistically is one version of the truth, because, one of the things that I love about working with young people is that you see sort of what's going to be in our future 3-4 years from now, because young people are thinking so deeply about all of these issues, and they're coming up with wonderful solutions. One of the things we've started is a cultural entrepreneurship program, and at the Harvard Business School with the undergraduates, with the dean of the arts and humanities. And so what we'll see 3 years from now will be the results of what these young people are thinking about. And in terms of young groups starting out, there are so many more ways. It's less expensive to record, which means that you can then be your own marketing person if you are interested in that way. But there's going to be a lot of development, and probably, and then it's going to coalesce into fewer but different ways of making music and distributing it.
It's interesting that it is less expensive to actually record. It's getting cheaper for the artists.
Absolutely.
And that must be encouraging a lot of new artists.
Absolutely. That means that people can, you have that many more groups, that many more people who can do it. But of course, that
can afford it.
That can afford it. You can make a CD for, under $5,000. For the people who really care about it, who think about society in different ways, I think those people are actually going to find the connections and do well.
With businesses, digital businesses like iTunes and Spotify and Pandora, has that affected classical music consumption?
Well, I think there are just many more ways of delivery.
Right.
And I think there is access. You have satellite radio. You can online streaming, and so what is interesting is I'm not sure that we're capturing all the people that are listening and participating in what you call classical music. And there's another thing: classical music is also changing. It's not
what it was.
Dead music, and but rather it's young people really loving something and then turning it into today's music.
You were a child prodigy, performing for Presidents Kennedy and Eisenhower at the age of 7. How extraordinary.
Who knew?
Who knew? What is your advice to young performers out there who would like to follow your footsteps? Is a path like yours even possible today?
Oh, it's more than possible. I think, first of all, I think it's so incredibly important to have people who believe in others. I think we all have done well because we've had mentors that have said, Maria, I know you can do it. Also, I think responding to need is incredibly important. So it's not like you're going to be something and do well because you're just talented, but it's more how you use your talent.
And I know that one of the things you're very passionate about is education, mentoring, which is so important. It prompted you to found the Silk Road Project. The group is bringing together musicians from more than 20 countries. Tell us about that. Commissioning over 70 new works.
Well, in many ways, when you have musicians from everywhere in the world, you can also look at our country and say, we actually have a population that is from all over the world. And I think making that connection back to the rest of the world and looking at other traditions is, in fact, an incredibly American thing to do. And what that does is we then develop an empathetic understanding of places that seem far away because they actually, the roots are also located in the United States. And I think that's a very good message to send to any student in any school, to say, well, what's the best thing you can do in a school is, in fact, to feel the connection to the rest of the world.
We're going to take a quick break. Will you play something for us?
Absolutely.
We're going to take a short break. Back in a moment. follow me on Twitter and on Google+. Look for @Maria Bartiromo. First, though, here's a look at the stories coming up in the week ahead that may move the markets and impact your money this week. On Monday, the ISM Manufacturing Index will be out. That tracks economic activity in the sector. It'll be out for the month of June. Also on Monday, interest rates on federally subsidized student loans will double to 6.8% for future borrowers. On Tuesday, the major automakers will report their sales for the month of June. And then on Wednesday, the markets will close at 1 p.m. and, of course, will be closed all day on Thursday in observance of the Independence holiday. And the all-important jobs report will be out on Friday. Surely a market mover. We'll be watching that. That'll do it for us for today. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great weekend. And to play us out, once again, Yo-Yo Ma.